Hello and welcome to the Lion's Den. My name's Toby Bennett from Black Crow Gaming, and today I'm going to be talking about the recent international team tournament, and that is where lots of teams, I think there was 695 players, so about 130 odd teams, all battled it out trying to get top spot. There was very many big names there, lots of international players across multiple different teams, and I was lucky enough to have a really good time there. So as you can probably guess from the title of this video, I did manage to go 5-0 myself. My team managed to go 4-1, so we finished 8th overall, and as an individual before the shadow round, I finished 14th out of 695. So I'm really pleased with that finish. Bit shocked, in all honesty, that it managed to go that way. But sometimes them's the breaks. Really pleased with that so far. So let's jump in to dissecting sort of how the games went, what I thought went well, what I thought didn't go so well, and why I made the decisions that I did. So round one, if you're familiar with the UKTC pack, you'll know that it's Terraform on sweeping engagement with swift action as your other mission ability, and I was up against Death Guard. Now we had a little bit more time to prep, because obviously with round one you get your pairings on the Wednesday and then play on the Saturday, and in this case you're probably going, why on earth did he go into Death Guard with Mortarion and all that horrible nasty stuff? Now, the reason that we did that was because no one else wanted to go into it. My entire job this weekend was to be a blunter. And what I mean by blunter is someone that just stops your opponent's armies that want to try and get loads of points out of you from scoring those points. So ultimately, trying to take those really aggressive lists and just go, you are not scoring more than 10 points. This is going to be a draw. Or making those narrow losses for your team, which then allows your pushers to go for the throat more, get those bigger wins, and then hopefully you win the entire match, because obviously in teams you just have to get to 55 to win the entire match. So that's why I was into Death Guard, which isn't the best of matchups for Dark Angels, because they like to ignore modifiers with Mortarion, and Mortarion is a massive pain in the ass to kill, and they have a -1 damage in combat. So in this case, I decided, well, let's just go aggressive. Let's just jail him, and let's try and stop him from scoring as much as possible. So as you can see, in this game, I focused on denying my opponent scoring as much as I damn well possibly could, including one turn we didn't even get to score his home objective. Now, the reason that I went for that was because it turns out bikes are quite quick. And what I did was I focused on the left-hand flank with my bikes. I focused with my Deathwing Knights in the centre, and I focused with my other kind of infantry units on the far right-hand flank, just so that I could try and score as much as possible. So I went for the turn 1 Terraform on my expansion objective on the far right. I also managed to charge him in his home objective with some scouts on turn 1, because I knew that it was just some Poxwalkers there, so they could just kind of bounce off each other for a while. And at that point, I'm like, okay, cool, they can just clash into each other, but those Poxwalkers aren't getting close to me for at least another turn. So that was quite useful. And then I had the bikes scream up on the left flank, pick up some Nurglings, and just kind of go, you're not going to get to this objective. I'm completely all over it. There's no way that you can score these points. And then that was going to force some cultists to come out and try and jail me, which I'm kind of fine with, because they're just cultists. They're going to get picked up immediately by the bike shooting, and then I can get into him a little bit further. So Deathwing Knights crashed into the middle, Incursors crashed into the middle, picked up some cultists in the centre, and just sort of made sure that I was pushing against him as hard as possible, trying to lock him in that deployment zone, make sure that nasty Plague bus with the Plague Marines and the two characters in there, the two wizard characters, can't remember what they're called, not Foul Blightspawn, Malignant Plague Casters, that give that horrible torrent effect. I was just trying to make sure that it wasn't able to leave his deployment zone overly easily. And luckily I did exactly that. So my opponent was really unable to score anything. In turn 2, he scored 4 points, which was his home objective, and then got some good killing secondaries and storming hostile. So that was kind of useful for keeping him in it. But that was my entire focus, just keep denying primary, keep the pressure on, and keep him fighting in those places where I wanted him. Ultimately, my bikes managed to scooch all the way around on that left-hand flank and go for his home objective, which was quite entertaining, I can't lie. Seeing the bikes just screech all the way from my home objective to his home objective over the course of the game was very, very entertaining, and it meant that I got to score quite a few points. I can't remember. I think I came off his home objective right at the end with the bikes because they needed to go and hunt down something or do some other kind of job. But essentially, Rotigus and Mortarion both survived. Like, Mortarion survived getting trashed by 10 Deathwing Knights and all of my Ballistus because he rolled really well on his 4-ups and -1 damage is a massive pain in the bum. Who'd have thought that, right, being a Dark Angels player? So he was kind of able to keep a lot of his army alive. He put a lot of it in Deep Strike as well, which then forced me to sort of quite, well, I wouldn't say reactively because I was still kind of in the driving seat, but it forced me to focus on denying points rather than trying to kill his army. There was no way that this was ever going to be like a 20-0 because if Mortarion had gone down, there is a chance that this would have been a 20-0. But as soon as he didn't fall that turn, I was like, okay, that's fine. We're just going for it for an 11-9, which is what I put in my matrix anyway. So that's going to be the focus. Bikes were amazing in this matchup because they could just zip around causing problems. They're kind of difficult to kill for predators as well because they don't get their -1 AP proc because they're not infantry. They don't get to wound them on 2s like they would most standard marines because they're T5, and then that -1 to hit, -1 to wound from ride hard, ride fast could be really useful. And in all honesty, just auto advancing with that unit is silly. That's going to come up quite a bit. I mean, I think this was just a really solid performance for the Dark Angels. It wasn't a game that I was expecting to do overly well in, so to come away with an 11-9, I was quite pleased. It was quite a brutal game, and in all honesty, my opponent's secondary cards were beyond perfect, apart from the first two, where he just couldn't do anything, and then everything else just fell into place perfectly. But you know, that's how these cards go. It's why you pick tactical cards, because sometimes they just go in the right order. So yeah, really good game. Really enjoyed the game against James, and overall the team managed to get exactly what they put on the matrix, which was really positive. So we came out with that with 5 wins, and I think everyone else had quite high wins as well. So that was really positive for the guys, and for me myself, it then meant that I spent the rest of the time sprinting around trying to get us all ready for a photo because there were 50 of us there at the ITT. But yeah, we got the win. Going into round 2, I was up against Chaos Space Marines and Renegade Raiders, which is actually my second army. So I knew what tricks they could do, and I also knew it was quite a bad matchup for the Chaos Space Marines. Playing on Purge the Foe, Crucible of Battle with Smoke and Mirrors, so pretty standard. There's some really good staging spots on this mission, and ultimately I just went, okay, as soon as I put too much pressure and don't let him just play his trading game, he's going to be in real trouble. And the build was it was a slightly different to what I've seen traditionally. Like, there was a Forge Fiend in there as well, which I'm not sure is quite pointed right for Renegade Raiders. You'll have seen if you watch the Call of Chaos, I tend to sort of talk a lot about infantry-based CSM lists, and I do still think that's correct. It's still a bad matchup for CSM to get Dark Angels because infantry into Deathwing Knights, they're just having a great time. But I think there was a couple of list building things that I spotted, and we chatted about it after the game as well. I was like, well, maybe that's not doing quite the damage that it needs to do to sort of justify the points. So this list didn't have any Rubric Marines, which I was quite surprised about, because those Flamers potentially going up to AP3 and just that innate wound roll re-roll is just really nice. And having a nasty torrent threat can keep armies like me in check. So that's kind of quite important, I feel. But yeah, it it was a really fun game is the best way to describe it, because we had just an absolute blast the whole time, really like laughing the entire time. But essentially what I did was there was a Master of Executions with this Scout enhancement, and some not Zerks, I was saying Master of Executions, assuming Wild Eaters, and some Legionaries that pushed up to his expansion objective. I was then, because there was only a Vindicator in terms of shooting, and it was in reserve, and obviously the Forge Fiend, but the Forge Fiend was right in the home objective, I was able to deploy my bikes super aggressively. So they went basically on the center of the battlefield, zoomed up, charged these legionaries, and just picked them up. Then that kind of forced both the Vindicator to come in right at the back, and a Lord and some Chosen to jump out and try and kill the bikes. They managed to kill a few bikes, but not too many, which then allowed my bikes to fall back, charge, and hit hard. And at that point, I was able to start really pushing with my Deathwing Knights in the center. Again, I just ran 15 of them down the center. Like, there is no finesse to it. It was an entirely a stat check move of just like, can you pass 15 Deathwing Knights hitting all of your units at the same time? No, okay, well, I think that's pretty good for what I'm trying to do. There wasn't anything in terms of like raptors or warp talons, if I remember correctly, so there wasn't too much going around really, really speedily, and the rhinos had to be deployed quite conservatively so they didn't get picked off by what are they called, Ballistus Dreadnoughts. So I think that was just the demonstration again of why you need to have the long range firepower to back up your charges, because it just stopped my opponent from deploying overly aggressively, because if I then went first, I would just pepper him with las cannon fire, and put him in a really, really tough spot. But again, the bikes just crashed up. I think after winning that flank, they didn't do so much. But at that point, they didn't really need to. Oh, actually, they scooted around and went for the home objective again, because that's what I enjoy doing with those bikes. They love going for a home objective. And then they're kind of just killing more units as they go. Once they break the back of where they need to be, it's very difficult for your opponent to stop them, because if they don't have that turn where they just pick up the whole unit, they're really in trouble when they just regenerate them, keep charging them, keep up that damage output, particularly when it's not like a stat checklist. So it was really, really good just to be able to get into my opponent, kind of bully him on that flank, allow me to just sort of go on to my expansion objective and not really worry too much. I think I just had Incursors there for the entire game, and then push up with those Deathwing Knights. And if you play a lot of Dark Angels, you will know exactly what Deathwing Knights do to power armored infantry, and it's nasty, nasty things. So they were just picking up all of this infantry, and then as soon as the Vindicator and the Forge Fiend went down, which was essentially as soon as they poked out, that was the game. There was nothing that could really threaten the Deathwing Knights at that point. And if there's nothing that can threaten the Deathwing Knights, then Stormlance is just in an obnoxiously good position. So that game ended 144, and I've got to say my opponent did really struggle on secondaries. He just kept on drawing quite poor secondaries, all secondaries that at that time were not helpful. So it's like, containment is usually a brilliant secondary to draw. It's not a brilliant secondary to draw when you just have a rhino left. Like that was the kind of the problem, and that's why I was able to keep him to such a low score. So that was quite a positive finish for me. Most importantly, after that game, both my opponent Jens and one of his teammates James came up and were really complimentary in terms of like my team's sportsmanship, and like how we'd approach the game, and made sure that everyone was having fun, even if the score was going against them. And that's the most important thing. I'm going to mention that a couple more times as well throughout this video, but like it is always the most important thing that you are a good opponent, whether you're winning or losing, and that your opponent has a great time. So going into round 3, 2-0, you start kind of panicking a little bit, because that's when you start seeing all of those big names teams like Total 40k, which is like Josh Roberts, Nathan Roberts, Innes Wilson, a couple of other guys as well. Really, really brutal teams and everything like that. You go, oh God, I don't want to go into them. But we went into the Warwickshire Warhawks, which actually is the perfect example of a team that are just phenomenal individuals, really great guys. And I got to have a revenge game against my very good friend James Colley, who is one of the Warwickshire Warhawks and is just an absolute gem of a bloke. We played at my first ever UKTC tournament, which was Leicester back in 2023. We played round 4 when I was really quite hungover, and it was like a really nasty mechanised guard list into my Firestorm Dark Angels, and I think I managed to edge it by a couple of points, but like there was, for most of the game we were in a point of each other, so it was a really tight game, really fun. Absolutely brilliant. And then I always get to go and say hi to James, have a good laugh with him, and the Warwickshire guys are just absolutely lovely as well, so it's always a pleasure to get to play one of them. And it was made all the more fun by it being James. But we're on a mission, which is not good for me. Not good for me at all in this one. So essentially what we had was take and hold, search and destroy, and hidden supplies. So search and destroy, yes, good, big win. Hidden supplies, no, bad. Because if you're trying to deny your opponent points and there's extra primary on offer, not good. And take and hold, really easy to score primary. And if you go second, oh crap, you can score it even easier. So essentially you go, right, opponent is going to score 15 primary at the end of this game if I go first. I have to stop them being able to do that. And in this game I went first, so I went, okay, right, time to be overly, and I literally turned to him and I went, I'm going to be as aggressive as I possibly can. And turn 1, I think I made like 4 charges. So some scouts went into and killed Gorn's ghosts, which was really quite fun, especially when they got shot up by the Incursors first. I killed some Catachans with some jump pack intercessors. I killed some Kriegsmen with Incursors, and I killed some more Catachans, but didn't wipe the unit with some more scouts. So it was just absolutely brutal, where just so much of this chaff infantry went down turn 1. And when your opponent's got 45 scions and then 10 aquilons as well, you just want to focus on getting rid of their ability to score points, because those guys have got to come in. They cannot do actions when they drop in because they need to start killing things. And they are, you spend so many points on them. If they drop in and do an action rather than killing what might charge them, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. So essentially did that, which was really positive. But then, my God, did James just pick up my models in return. I lost so many Marines turn 1. It was not looking overly good. And I was kind of like, oh, okay, maybe that was a little bit too aggressive, including when he managed to get three unsaved wounds on my Deathwing Knights with a Demolisher Cannon and proceeded to kill 3 Deathwing Knights. I was just like, oh God. Okay, so that's how it's going to be, is it? This is not positive. But I was able to secure quite a lot of the board. I was able to sort of have the middle of the board. I was able to take the top left-hand corner of the board. And I also had the bottom right-hand corner as well, but that was kind of sparsely defended, and I knew that was where the scions were going to drop, and it was just a case of, can I answer when those scions drop? But as you can see in my primary, I was scoring 15 every turn, so it was like, just bury him under points, let him come in and just pick up your entire army. It's fine if you get tabled as long as you win on the points, and it was my job just to get those draws, like I mentioned. However, I didn't clock that down on all of the other tables. That's what was happening on every other game. So we were drawing, I think we drew 2 games very quickly. And then I think we got a small win in 1 and then a 3rd draw in another. I had no idea of this the entire time. So I was just like, nah, just be aggressive. Go for him. Try and get those draws. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And like not clocking that I needed to go and get a big win for us to win the round, which was more than a little stressful. However, and this is where the bikes just, again, I feel like I mention the bikes every round. Maybe they are actually just good. Mad. So the bikes screamed across the board. They went from the top left-hand corner down to that bottom right-hand corner with the... So they're sort of around the objective on the middle of the board, but on the bottom right, in that sort of little ruin there. And I spent the 2 CP to auto advance there, then spent another CP so that they could shoot, and they picked up a Scion unit, then spent another CP so that they could lance and reroll their charges. And obviously, because they're Ravenwing, they're already at an inch because of the Ravenwing command squad. So they make their charge and they pick up another unit. And at that point, again, they deny those primary. And at that point, there's 30 dead Scions. It was absolutely perfect. I couldn't have had it go better, because all of those Scions are suddenly dead and I'm able to go in and tag that final brick. And at that point you kind of go, oh, okay, so the big nasty killing power is mostly dead and it can't be picked up again. What do we do now? So I just had to survive the clapback, and in all honesty, most of my Deathwing Knights were dead at this point. Like it is not a good matchup for Deathwing Knights. They will just die. And like I think that was one of the most telling bits, that just this bridgehead is terrible for Deathwing Knights. It makes them feel like they're paper. I think all of them died in this match. Yeah, actually every single Deathwing Knight died in this match. But they sold themselves very expensively. They didn't really. They got smashed by Demolisher Cannons and Plasma and all that horrible stuff. But essentially, I then had I had James locked, so he has to fall back just so that he can try and shoot at my bikes, which then allows me to reactive move. So reactive move away. All nice and good. Get out of that line of fire, and because it's only a 24-inch Demolisher Cannon, I don't have to worry about more than one gun line, because the other one I can reactive move out of range, and from the one where he's coming up the centre, I can just get out of line of sight. So at that point, the bikes aren't going to be shot. And when they're not shot, they're then able to do exactly the same thing again. They rinsed and repeated, which was brilliant. They killed all of those final Scions, picked up the Aquilons, and then that flank was just gone. And there was nothing that could really contest me apart from 2 tank commanders and the sort of the brick that stays at home. And there were some Scions that dropped in my home objective, like dropped behind my home objective. But that's why I really like sticky objectives, because I hid on the other side of the wall very heroically, I will add. And then had a Ballistus Dreadnought charge back and kick them to death, which was very entertaining. He just sort of stomped them a little bit. It's why I take the Ballistus, because they're surprisingly good in combat against those kind of T3 infantry. So yeah, like don't sleep on Ballistus combat. They can advance and charge like just as good as everyone else. Not just as good as everyone else, but they can do it if they are pushed to. And again, we're going to say the bikes again, because they then screeched down with an auto advance on that right-hand flank, got into James's home objective, was able to kill Creed for a, I think it was, mark for death, and then they killed enough for overwhelming force. And again, those 2 tank commanders, which you feel like they're one of the first things that kind of needs to die, because they're the things that threaten Deathwing Knights, they survived on, I think, full wounds. I just did nothing to them, but they couldn't score anything. Like they couldn't get there fast enough, and because they had to keep shooting, they couldn't get the extra movement. They were locked in their deployment zone for a turn. There was just so much that they had to do, and it goes back to that kind of that main focus of Stormlance, that you make them sort of dance to your tune, and then at that point, you're kind of dictating the entire pacing of the game, the positioning, everything like that. And the only real challenge to that was when those 45 Scions dropped out the sky and just picked up Deathwing Knights in a Ballistus. And that caused a lot of problems. But because the bikes had that maneuverability to get across the board, they just did their thing. And it was beautiful. And the most important thing again, though, James was a brilliant opponent. Much love, James. We had a great time. We had a beer. We had a laugh. We were messing around. I had one of my teammates come over and just be like, because he'd watched one of my Deathwing Knights units just get absolutely slaughtered by a Demolisher Cannon. And I'm pretty sure some of the language that I'd used when James was doing that can't be repeated, but it was a lot of fun. We had a really great game. And as I say, the other games mostly ended in draws, but because this was a 20-0, We managed to sneak it and go into day 2 undefeated, which was super exciting. And we got Team Hive Mind, which is another team that I really, really like. Really lovely guys. We played their kind of, not their team, but their team at the last ITT with Misters of Battle. But unfortunately, they were forced to drop, which was a real shame for them. Really gutted. But hopefully we'll get another game against them soon, which meant we went into Corsten A's on Burden of Trust. Boo! Everyone hates Burden of Trust. But actually, no, it's fine. As long as you know how to play it. It's just not an overly enjoyable one if you don't know how to play it. And it is it's a steep learning curve, and it's an incredibly punishing learning curve if you don't know how to play it. So I got offered Chaos Knights or Imperial Knights, and I thought they were both really good matchups. Turns out that the Team England matrix says that Chaos Knights are not good for Dark Angels, which really surprised me, because traditionally they've been quite positive for me. But I mean, they're Team England. They are better than me. They know what they're doing a hell of a lot more than I do. So just take that into account, that actually Knights might not be as good a matchup if we're going up against those sort of top players. So, but that's Chaos Knights. This was Imperial Knights. So I'm really glad I picked the Imperial Knights, which was, the kind of classic build of Canis, a Lancer, and then Warglaives, Helverins and Warglaives. And it was brilliant. I love it. Like, it was so much fun to go against. But oh my God, I forgot how to roll dice. Like, genuinely, I forgot how to do a 4-up. I was watching Deathwing Knights just get slaughtered by Helverin fire, which is -1 AP. And it's like, yeah, sure, it's 3 damage, which is punishing, but like they were absolutely gunning through the Deathwing Knights. Again, I decided to go quite aggressive. I went second, so I was like, well, I could stand off, or I could kind of push, go for the kills, and see if I can try and eke out an early 20-0, or at least just deny him as much as possible, because in all honesty, Knights on Burden of Trust is not an overly good matchup, especially when all of those armigers have free heroic intervention, because those Warglaives get real scary real fast. So I managed to pick up a couple of the Warglaives turn 1, which I think was really important, because just nullifying those combat threats early really helped me just kind of dictate the pace of the combats. Then the Lancer popped out, came and said hello, picked up a bunch of bikes, made those bikes very, very sad. That Lancer is a nasty, nasty boy. But then I was able to get into the Lancer with all of my Deathwing Knights, pick it up, and at that point I'm like, okay, if I can get Canis, we're in a good spot. Canis and the Helverins just then go absolutely crazy and butcher, I think it was about 9 Deathwing Knights. And I'm like, I have like none left at this point, and I've still got a Canis on full wounds. What do now? But then luckily my dice decided to go, okay, cool, we can actually roll all right when we're shooting. So the Ballistus Dreadnoughts, those 130 points Ballistus Dreadnoughts just popped off. Las cannons galore, absolutely peppering my opponent. And he'd really hoped that I wasn't going to kill him in shooting, so he'd saved his only CP so that he could fight on death. Makes sense, right? Like, I think, Canis fighting on death, he probably picks up another unit of Deathwing Knights, causes me more issues, all that kind of stuff. But instead, I was able to kill him with Azrael in the end. So I got Canis was down to like 2 wounds. Azrael gives himself assault and then finishes off Canis with his dev wound gun, which was absolutely beautiful, in all honesty. I had a great time with that. And then Sir Hector pops out and Azrael makes I think it was like an 11-inch charge to go, and he'd rolled a 6 on his advance as well. So it was like that. So I can roll for Azrael. Couldn't roll for any Deathwing Knights. They got absolutely slaughtered, like absolutely slaughtered. But Azrael popped off and then was promptly slaughtered by incoming Helverin fire. But apart from that, it was very positive. So I locked the last armigers up, sort of just shot them as much as I could with las cannon fire and with missiles. And at that point, I was able to just score out the rest of the game. There weren't many Helverins left alive, and because my opponent had focused on Storm Hostile and Engage in all fronts, that just gave me a bit of an edge in finishing off his point scoring, which gave me a 19-1 because I did not score well myself in this mission. I really struggled because of the amount of stuff that Ross was just picking up. And yes, it was very much because I'd gone super aggressive and then made no saves. But I don't know if I'd play like that again on Burden. Maybe it was too aggressive. But equally, you kind of go, well, what if they just put a ton of OC on all those objectives and just went, well, you're not having it? What are you going to do? And like I kind of liked the fixed in this one of Engage and Storm because it's Burden, so I have to go on those objectives. And Engage, you do want to be everywhere. Obviously, it didn't work out amazingly, but that's because one of the flanks fell on turn 4. But yeah, so another really good game. Ross was a brilliant opponent, really nice guy. We had a good laugh. And he was another opponent that really made me happy that he sort of told a story about a game that he'd had previously, which had been a bit of a naff one. His opponent had sort of had a take back himself and then not let Ross have a take back, which is not good form at all. Don't do that. Like, give take backs to your opponent if they let you have take backs. If your opponent forgets something, let them have it back unless like something has dramatically changed or a dice has been rolled, that kind of stuff. Because like if you win a game because someone forgot something like that they definitely would have done, did you win? Really? Like, it's just memory at that point. And as someone that really suffers with their memory, like and like the whole time we'd just been like making sure that everyone was aware of what was going on, why we could do something, why something might not be a good idea because of the response that we could have to it, that kind of stuff. So it was a really, really fair, positive game. And he said, the game that we just had was nothing like that previous game. I had a great time, even though the score was quite telling. It was a 19-1. It was far more fun than the other game that was a 10-10. So I was really pleased with that. Again, like, sod the wins. Like, if my opponent had a great time, that's more important to me. We all like winning. We're playing competitive Warhammer, but the thing that actually makes me go home feeling warm and fuzzy is my opponent's having a good time, and like knowing that that's a person that I can see at another tournament and go, hey, have a good chat with them, have a chin wag. Like, that's the best part. Community is the most important thing with this game. So we're going into round 5 and we are 4 wins and 0 losses. Now, what we didn't realise is that round 4 was an absolute slaughter. So many of the top teams paired into each other and just drew. There were so many draws. It was crazy. And we were sort of going, right, okay, so we've got the option of 2 of the Mind Goblins teams or Vanguard Tactics. And everyone else has had a draw. So we're like, okay, I mean, we don't want Mind Goblins 1s because, my God, no, they're all like England players. Amazing guys, by the way. And Mind Goblins 2 is like, okay, cool. Well, that's not much easier. They might be the 2s, but they're really not 2s. They would be many, many clubs' first team. And then Vanguard Tactics is Vanguard Tactics. They are very, very good players. Mike Porter, Ben Jones, obviously Steve Box, Mike Costello, and Aidan Smalley. Aidan's obviously very well known for his Death Guard. The other guys. Mike Porter is very well known as just an all-round very strong player. Ben, similarly, extremely good player. And then obviously you can see Mike and Steve on the channel, so you know just how good they are. Mike, I think, was very, very technical in terms of his rules knowledge, which is, you want someone like that in your team. And then Steve is Steve. He's just a very, very talented player, very nice guy. Really enjoyable team to go against. And shockingly, as you can probably guess, we went against Vanguard Tactics next, who are all round just brilliant guys. It was a real pleasure to play against them. And we did end up losing the next round. I got a win, which is really, really nice. But we did lose that one. But my God, it was fun. It was a huge amount of fun. Like, we all walked away with massive smiles on our face. In the last one, we kind of walked away going like, what could have been? But this ICT, we were like, that was awesome. This was great. And we've only lost to people that are going to the Shadow Round. And then I think they lost the Shadow Round by like 1 point to Mind Goblin A's. But yeah, that's enough about that. Let's talk about the game. So I was up against Mr. Ben Jones, who is as I already have said, a phenomenal individual, kind, informative, supportive, making sure that everything is played the correct way. He's an absolute credit to Vanguard Tactics. And I loved our game. I loved every damn second of it. I must admit, I was a little bit intimidated going into it because I've only had friends play Ben, and usually when they played Ben, they've been thrashed by Ben. So it was one of those where I'm like, okay, I know I'm going to have a good game, but I might get my ass handed to me, and I need to kind of be the blunter. So how do I make sure that my ass doesn't get handed to me? And turn 1, you can see that I got overwhelming force and no prisoners going first, and he was completely hidden. Oops. Not good. Not a good start. And I was like, oh, shit. Right, okay. How do I recover from this? And I don't know if I played it correctly. I don't think I did in hindsight. I just decided to go a little bit more defensively and focused on staging. Didn't really push up. Just kind of took a couple of positions, but then move blocked the Vindicators with my scouts. And maybe that wasn't quite right. But the Vindicators still, like, it stopped them from having the key allies for when I had my push. And I do think that was quite useful. But my God, Desolation Marines, like, you are reading that correctly. That is Anvil Siege Force. I was just as surprised. I'd actually said before the tournament, because someone had said, Ben Jones is playing Anvil Siege Force. And I was like, everyone's going to think he's mad right now. And then 2 weeks down the line, they're all going to go, he's a genius. It turns out it was Ed Watts that came up with this list. Ben mentioned that to me. Ed Watts from 6++, go check them out. They're absolutely incredible. Lovely group of guys as well. And fuck me, it's an impressive list. Like, you don't expect that. You don't expect impressive and Anvil Strike Force in the same sentence. Like, it's just, it doesn't seem normal. We've never seen it be good before. But damn, it was impressive. Like, with Desolators as well. Like, what on earth? So this was Ultramarines. So it was Marnie's Calgar and the Company Heroes, which is a lovely combo. Really very good. So I was quite impressed with how that went. And as I say, I didn't play it super aggressively on turn 1. And then after Ben just kind of focused on screening himself, I just went, what happens if I throw everything at you, force you to try and kill everything that I've just thrown at you, and hope? And that's exactly what I did. I just chucked all 15 Deathwing Knights at him. One of them failed their charge, but it doesn't matter. The bikes just screamed in and focused on killing. Can't even remember what unit it was, but they focused on killing, which is very, very important. And at that point, I was like, right, we'll try and pick up some of the Vindicators. We'll put some pressure down, and we'll see what we can do. Went super aggressive, and then I'm like, okay, I'm fully exposed here, Ben. Do what you may. Try and kill as much as possible in return. And that is obviously what Ben tried. One of the really big moves was I was able to reactive move back behind the centre. I was able to avoid... Sorry, I'm just going to close my door. I was able to sort of move back and cover the centre with the Deathwing Knights, so that they were the Oath unit. So basically, Ben couldn't shoot into them with lots of stuff, which was super beneficial. And at that point, I think I lost quite a few Deathwing Knights still, but I made a lot of saves. It's at this point, it's a little bit of a blur in terms of what happened, but essentially, Marnius and the Deathwing Knights fought over the centre. The Ballistus and the Vindicators were sort of trading shots. The Vindicators were trying to kill Deathwing Knights and kill bikes. The bikes were incredibly survivable. I lost 3 of them, and then they just kept regenning them. I went down to 3 of them remaining. So I had an Outrider, the Champion, and the Apothecary left, and then they just kept regenning, and they just consistently picked up a guy, ride hard, ride fast is such a powerful stratagem, especially when Ben hadn't oathed the bikes, because suddenly they're -1 to hit, so you're hitting them on 4s, and they're +1 to, they're -1 to wound, so that, that it just really screws with the maths there. And then, because I'm in cover, I'm still saving on 5s with the bikes, and there's also that invulnerable save if needs be. So the bikes managed to tank it out. The Deathwing Knights managed to tank it out, and eventually they just started getting into those threats, shooting at those Vindicators from over 24 inches away, because my god, I do not want to get reactive shot back. That was very, very nasty. So luckily it didn't happen. But then it allowed me to kind of focus on killing. And as you can see, I got really quite a low score for singles. Like 76 is like, a lot of people lose with a 76. And the only reason that I was able to sort of get the win here was because I just focused purely on aggression. I was like, right, sod the secondaries, we're going for it. We're just going to focus on killing, get as many points as possible, and see what we can do. And this one actually ended up with a 15-5. Unfortunately, one of my teammates on Necrons got 19-1'd by Steve. One of my teammates got 20-0'd by Gene Stealer Colts, which was quite rough, by Mike Porter. Then our Votan player got 10-10'd by Guard. And then the World Eaters went down 16-4. So unfortunately, it was quite a brutal loss still. But I went 5-0, and I'm damn happy with that. I'm going to take the wins where I can find them, and that was definitely one of them. So overall, it was a hell of a good weekend, and well done on Vanguard Tactics for coming second. Some quick reflections, because I've already kept you here for 40 minutes. Stormlance is real good. I like it. It is a lot of fun. Is it going to be the best way to play Space Marines or Dark Angels? I mean, Team England are playing Dark Angels Gladius, I think. I think most like top Dark Angels players apart from me are playing Gladius, so there is probably a reason for that. But I still love Stormlance. I think it's brilliant. I've been really impressed with the bike brick. I didn't see anyone really playing it, so I don't know why. Because obviously we had the result at Nottingham as well. But yeah, no one seems to have really adopted it. So I'm like, yeah, don't take it. Let me keep playing this and not get nerfed. It's brilliant. I like it. Which kind of brings me on to the next thing, where I thought I was a blunter. I thought I was just meant to go out there and get those 10-10s. But a lot of the time, because of the matchups I was getting and because of how aggressive I was allowed to be, I ended up being the pusher. So it's an interesting comment on teams that sometimes you really need to realize what your role is halfway through the game. Like, even if you have that predefined plan, it needs to be able to be flexible. And then just a word to the new meta and what that's going to look like. We know that Eldari and Guard are getting their codexes. I'm pretty sure both of the more competitive builds are going to be bad matchups for this Stormlance and Dark Angels in general. I think it's a really tough one. So I think we might have to start looking at alternatives and what those alternatives might need to be. So I think you might see me with a completely different list at the next tournament. So I'm going to have some experiments. I'm going to be posting sort of that journey, because I've got a bit of a break from Super Majors now. So I'm going to be posting that journey over on my Patreon in terms of like what lists I'm trying, how I'm doing at local tournaments, all that kind of stuff, just so that I can kind of develop that strategy. So if you want to go and see that, and if you want to support me, like, head over to Patreon. I'll stick a link in the comments in the description, so that you can go and follow that if you like. It's not very expensive, so hopefully it will be beneficial to you. It's going to have loads of sort of long form content, loads of sort of extra bits and bobs in terms of like photos, lists, all that kind of stuff. And there's a group chat as well, so you can listen to me chat shit as well, which is kind of fun. I enjoy chatting shit, if you can't tell. Thank you so much for watching. Go check out Glasshammer, use the code BlackCrow, get 5% off. Go and buy all the new things for the new meta. It's probably Vindicators. So go buy them, although they are currently sold out because I did check myself last night. But, pre-order, and then they might order more of them. So that would be good. And then you can also go and check out our sponsor, Terrainforge. You can use the code BCG5 and get some lovely, lovely terrain for a 5% off discount. So thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate you. Drop your comments, likes, all that kind of stuff below. I do go through every single one. I love reading what you guys say. I love interacting with you guys. It's great fun. And yeah, we've got the new Patreon. I now also coach over on Angelus Mortis Coaching. You can check that out. It's still a new website. Be nice to me. But yeah, if you want to get a little bit more of my stupid face, let me know. And you can have more of my stupid face. And it will be good fun. So as always, thank you so much for watching and stay loyal, fuckers. Thanks, guys. Bye.